Welcome to Dark Sorcery. I'm Alfredo Martinez, and I have with me the one and only Espen Kane. Good to have you on, Espen Kane.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. So, I have with me my copy of the Book of Smokeless Fire, and very good book, and we'll get into that a little later. But first, let's go ahead and talk a bit about your magical background. So, where did your interest in magic begin?
Um, I would say like most people on their path. I was raised Catholic and Christian until I would say about 15, 16. I started looking into other religions, other paths, because I wasn't I just didn't feel it with the Judeo-Christian system. Even though, it had been pounded into me, it just never felt right to me. And so at that time in your life, you're kind of looking for your individuality and your own path and whatnot. And so, I like, back in the day, then it's like there wasn't really the internet, so the best thing you could do was go down to your local bookstore and, find what new age books, I guess, what magic books that you could find, I ended up, buying some Celtic books, some Egyptian magic books, different things like this. But even Wicca stuff, I was looking into, just trying to find my way, because I knew I was searching for something, I just wasn't sure what. And it's like I remember going through them, and some things really resonated with me, and then there were things that just didn't, And so
Mm.
I ended up not just like, hey, this is my path, this is it. I ended up kind of doing chaos magic, even though I didn't know it was chaos magic at the time. I took different elements that I did resonate with, whether they be techniques, philosophies, whatnot, and kind of made my own religion or my own magical path. I wouldn't say it was a religion per se, but it's like I created my own way forward. And from that I continued doing for years, and that was my own thing, into my 20s, and so that worked well for me. That was fine. Then I kind of fell off for a little while in my 20s. Had some crazy times and went through a lot of different things, and then eventually years later, I was a rare book dealer, and I had in the occult, and so I actually had amassed a beautiful, pretty complete collection of books, of magic books. And there's times in your life where you're just like, what am I doing, or what am I looking for, where am I going? And I turn around and here's my library, and so I really just started studying, really, really in depth and hardcore, looking at all the different magical systems, all the different magicians. And that's the thing about magic is you look at it and you think, there's got to be something to this. There's philosophers, there's scientists that are writing these books. This isn't just some crazy person off the street. So it's like there's merit to this. So I started really studying techniques and philosophies behind how these systems, and so it's kind of led me to learning all of these things, and then now a place in my life where I started writing my own systems and my own books, and that's kind of like in my apprentice program that I offer. It's kind of what I'm trying to do with my students is where they're making magic their own and creating their own system, which in my belief is the ultimate goal of magic. Is to make it your own.
Mm.
So
Yeah,
I mean, that's kind of my upbringing as far as it goes. It's been an interesting path.
it is interesting, and I know that you stress in your books about the importance of making magic your own. It's very important. Um, Now, where would you say you had your first uh, holy shit moment where you say, "Wow, there really is something to this"? Where, wow, it you see that magic really does work.
Well, I mean, that's the funny thing about magic when you start doing it. I'm a skeptic first and foremost. Like, if something goes bump in the night, I'm not the first person to say it's spirits. So it's
Yeah.
like I need something backed up. I need substantial evidence of things. So it's like when you first start doing rituals, you start noticing coincidences. It's like, oh, did I do that, or did I affect it, or is that just
Yeah.
coincidence? You know, um, so what's interesting though is if like almost if you laid out a graph though, it's like how many times did you do a ritual and get result from it? So it's like your coincidences actually start adding up, and
Hmm.
that scale starts tipping to where you're actually able to see, hey, I am having an effect on my reality. You know,
Right.
um, as far as my big moment of, is there a spiritual world? Is there something else going on, in our reality around us? Um, that that happened when I was 9. I was almost kidnapped, and I had an experience where a voice, it had never happened to me, scared the hell out of me. Kind of just came in. I was walking down the road. It's a long story, but I was walking down the road when I was 9, and there was a car that pulled up, and the guy got out. Nothing weird about it, really, but all of a sudden, I just got it, just like somebody punched you in the
Right.
face, you
Right.
know, and it reeled me. It physically reeled because it hit me so hard, and it instantly scared the hell out of me. And it just said, "Don't go any farther."
Hmm.
And I didn't even know what to think of
Right.
when this happened.
Right.
And I was like, me being me, of course. I'm like, well, I'll go across the street, go around the guy, and go back across the street to my house. And as soon as I thought that, again, it hit me and it just said no. And at that point, I was just terrified. I turned around, crying, running as fast as I could, banging on doors. There was a kidnapper after me. That was what I was screaming.
Yeah.
And eventually, somebody opened the door. They called the police, and the guy was wanted for 8 counts of child molestation, and I was his next victim.
Mm.
So there, at that point, it's like once your eyes have been open, once you experience something so insane like that, so powerful, it's like you can't close your eyes again.
Yeah.
There's something out there. Was that my guardian angel? Was it God? Was it? I don't know what it was. I can't tell you. It's still a mystery to me.
Uh,
And so it is what it is. But it's just when you have an experience like that, some kind of magical, and since then I've had other things, other experiences, and so
mm.
once that happens, it's so you can't close your eyes, and you're curious, and you always want to know more, So there was
Yeah.
never a doubt to me: is did the spirit world exist? Is there something else? I couldn't deny the fact that there was. It put a guy behind jail and saved my life,
Hmm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of where that took place. It was deeply rooted in me at an early age.
Yeah. I don't see how anybody can be an atheist because there's so much supernatural activity all over, or even, if you, it's hard to not have eyes to see, but there's just so much evidence around. Um, is there a particular occult book that you would say changed your life and got you on your path?
Not one in particular. I think it's kind of a combination of several books. I really resonate with Pete Carroll's work. I
Mm.
almost see him as a mentor in a way. He has really his philosophies and thoughts align with mine, and so it's like I find a lot of inspiration there. There was a book also called Magic, Black and White, by Franz Hartmann. That's also a really good read. That's
Mm.
gets you into a deeper contemplative state of things. Um, but to me, it's like you have a spiritual side of this, and you have a scientific side of magic. Because to me, it's not just spiritual. By magic, I had to first understand reality. What is the basis of our reality?
Right.
If there's this force that exists like gravity and whatnot, and magic is a force that also is involved in this reality, how does that work? How is that there? And so you have to kind of look at the base structure of reality and understand, you go into like quantum physics, basically. And when I started
Right.
studying quantum physics, when I started looking at like the holographic universe theory, when I started finding these things, I found magic in. And so it's interesting now that in a way, science is catching up to magic in a lot of ways, with things, but they go hand in hand. They're intertwined. There isn't spirituality and science. They're both one and the same thing. It's just a matter of understanding the process of how magic, uh,
Mm.
and that's kind of what the key of a successful evocation, or how you would perform something with great result, in my opinion,
Mm.
is having an understanding, having a firm belief in this works. And that's what I had to have. I had to look and find a firm belief in, all right, show me how it works.
Mm.
And I find that, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, no, no. Go ahead and finish up. I was just listening to you.
So it's that's kind of where I found a lot of things, a lot of magic. There's some great books out there on the subject. The Holographic Universe by Michael Talbot, as well as like this book called The Field by Lynn McTaggart,
Mm.
as well as Our Mathematical Universe by Max Tegmark. And, you read these three books, and you have a real good basis of the reality that we're in and how we can affect it. Whether you believe in a holographic universe or not, I'm not
Right.
saying I 100% do. It's the whole simulation theory, which is very interesting and could take up a lot of time just talking on that alone.
Exactly. That
But
could be a whole nother video.
the jury's still out basically on that for me, but I do find it, very interesting. And I do find that a lot of the techniques in magic, when you look at that system, you can see how they work and why they work,
Mm.
and so there's a firm belief in this. With magic, I could never believe that people just say things or say magic words and draw a circle on the floor or a triangle, and things happen. That just, I couldn't make that connection. It doesn't, it sounds like fairy tale to me. But when I started understanding how to actually do that correctly and the science and philosophy behind why that works, then it all fits into place.
Mm.
So it took a while for me to really firmly build a foundation of strong belief and mechanics of how this works, why it works.
Okay.
But that's it's kind of like understanding the topography of magic, or the magic.
All right. Now let's get into the Book of Smokeless Fire in discussing it. Now, first let's go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and just summarize for those who may not be familiar with the jinn. The jinn are mentioned in the Quran and in a few older sources, but basically, Allah, it was Allah and the angels, and then there was his first and most beautiful angel, Iblis, and then God decides to Allah, I would say, decides to create man from clay. Says, go ahead and bow down to them. Iblis refuses,
Right.
um, and then Allah says, go ahead and get out of here. And then Iblis and his angels roam the earth, and they are made from fire. Now, where did your interest in the jinn begin?
Well, it was something that actually I kind of stumbled upon. I was working, I had written the book, the Black Book of Azathoth,
Mm-hmm.
working with the old ones in Nyarlathotep. What I wanted to do, well, actually, this was before the Black Book. So
Okay.
I had written a precursor to that, basically, which was Volabilis Ex Chaosium, which was my first book. And then the Black Book, excuse me, is essentially expanded on that. But I was working on a follow-up book to Volabilis, and really wanted to work with Nyarlathotep being the sole focus of that work, and really look into where he came from, looking at entities of the Middle East and looking into that situation. I stumbled across the Book of Deadly Names. And so I picked that up to take a look at that, and realized, that this was a whole Solomonic system that hadn't been implemented yet. It hadn't been flushed out to be usable to the modern magician. And so, it was a huge undertaking. I it was a massive undertaking. I had to create the circles and the triangles, all of the sigils. It took forever. There was just, like, in my office, there was just sigils and diagrams all over the floor.
Yeah.
Because I would sit there, and just really let the images come to me as I drew them out. You know, it's almost an evocation of each one of them. Some of them would take minutes to create, some would take hours, you know, and or some would take, I have to come back a few days later, you know. So it's just how it was developed. It did take a good deal of time. Um, so you know, I saw this. I recognized the importance of a Solomonic text being brought forth for a modern era, and I went ahead and took on that undertaking and brought it forth. I don't personally believe that a lot of the diagrams and the circles and triangles and whatnot came directly from me, but rather through me. Uh,
Mm.
start to see um, designs, start to see circles or triangles, but I could only see parts of them, and then I would sit and draw those parts, and the rest would develop. You know, so it's almost like automatic writing in a sense when that was created.
I see. Now, in this magical system, in your book, you stress on the importance of using blood uh, in the system for the jinn to feed off of. Uh, Now, what would you say to those occultists who would tell themselves, "Well, yeah, I can use blood, but I'm not so sure about using my own because the thought of me being bound to such an entity is intimidating." What would you say to those people?
You know, the thing with the Book of Smokeless Fire is it's a paperback. It's out there for, you know, $20 or whatever, you know, and anybody can pick it up. And I think that the importance or significance of that, because of the price range or because of that, you know, that it's offered so freely, that the book is possibly not taken as seriously as it should be. I do, you know, really warn people if they're going to work with this system that, you know, a lot of devastation can come. Um, if you're going to work this system, if you're going to go and do that, then you need to be sure beforehand. You
Mm-hmm.
need to already know that you're going to do this and commit to it. This isn't for a person who's got 1 foot in and 1 foot out. So if you're not all in, then you're not all in, you know, and that's the way it is with this particular system. So if you know you're going to do it, be sure that you're going to do it, be all in, and that's where it's at. So if you're not prepared to do what you know what is there instructed, then you should really, you know, take a step back, maybe meditate on this. This is something you really want to do, you know.
Yeah, I mean, once you go ahead and unleash these forces, there really is no going back.
Yeah, I mean, I've written, you know, Book of Smokeless Fire and the Book of Smokeless Fire 2. Both times I had an insane amount of what I would consider bad luck or unfortunate events.
Mm.
Things that have pretty much torn my life down several times now because of these books. There won't be a Smokeless Fire 3. In other words, you know,
Yeah,
I'm good. So, you know, it's something that you should really take seriously and not trifle with if you're not sure.
I would agree with that. Also, in the book, when you get to the part where you talk about the incense, you mention using myrrh and coriander seed. Now, I can understand coriander seed because it is associated with the planet Mars, but
Sure.
why myrrh in particular?
You know, it's kind of personal preference in this. I do like myrrh. I do like also frankincense, and the reason for these
Mm.
particular incenses that I do work with a lot of the what I would consider older spirits. Even though
Mm.
the Gen aren't spirits, I shouldn't say that, but entities or intelligences, if you will,
Right.
is because when they were worked with back in that time, in where they were first brought forth, where they were first worked with in the temples that were there, this was something that was burned a lot in honor of these kinds of beings. And so it's something that I associate with them and something that I feel that they are familiar with.
Okay. All right. Now, the energy of this system connects best with the waxing crescent moon. Now, why that phase of the moon in particular?
That, you know, as when you're putting systems together, you do add your own personal touches to, you know, your own prejudices, if you will, or
Right.
influences, and that's one of mine. When I told you that I had first started working with chaos magic or putting the different systems together when I was a teenager,
Mm-hmm.
um, this system that I worked with was I didn't worship, but gave honor to um, the waxing crescent moon within the first 3 days. So that was something that I worked with. The crescent moon has always been significant in my life. Big changes, either bad or good, would
Mm.
occur on these, and it's just something I started noticing when I was young. So that I added in there as my own personal preference. If you notice, even in the book, there's the lunate script, which is
Yeah.
based on the moon or crescent moons and whatnot.
Mm.
So there's that influence as well, but also on a magical kind of perspective of working and tying ritual to the moon as it grows. So does the strength of that ritual when connecting the two. So that's one of the things that I felt would be powerful to implement into the system.
Okay. Now, is there a particular type of gin that you would like to work with most or you feel drawn to out of all of them that are named in the book?
Um, No, really, there's not. I They're all very, very dark entities, very sinister entities. I had a moral morality kind of issue about releasing it at times. I would struggle with it because I recognized that I was re-releasing into the world essentially after 1,000 years these entities to be worked, and
Uh,
to be accessible to everybody. So I felt that pressure, that weight of that responsibility. I kind of grouped them all together in the clan that they are in, the Ta'al. I don't like working with any of them. In fact, anymore, I don't do rituals for others that involve Jinn, or even work with them myself, or at least these particular house or clan of Jinn.
mm,
As I said, I've had devastating effects from working with it. The thing about Jinn is they might be able to help you do what you're trying to achieve, but they also take their toll from you. And I try to warn people of this situation, and some of them heed that warning, others do not. So
mm.
it's a very touchy situation. They're very dark. So I found that there's other ways to work with things without having to work with the gens. I've kind of, at least like the particular gen of the Smokeless Fire series, just because like I said, I've had enough loss, and I've had enough pain from bringing this forth into the world, and so I'm good. I there's other spirits and intelligences that I work with that do just fine without devastating my life. So,
Mm.
word of advice, word of warning: if you're going to work this system, understand it's very serious, it's very devastating. It can be devastating to what you're wanting to, I guess, attack, but also understand that it does come back to you, or it can come back to you in a lot of different devastating ways. So
Mm.
there's a lot that can be gained from it, but again, just tread with caution.
Hmm. I would agree. Now, one question I did want to run past you is what would you say are some misconceptions in the left hand path?
I hate the fact that people think that the left hand path, you want to do evil for the sake of doing evil because it's cool. Like, hey, let's do anti reversals of Catholic rituals, or like the Black Mass, if you will. It's almost a parody to
Yeah.
me, and it really doesn't look good for the left hand path. To me, the left hand path is about individuality. It's about self empowerment. It's about freedom, spiritual freedom, releasing one's chains of dogma from possibly their Judeo Christian path, or any kind of path like that, and really coming into themselves. To me, Lucifer is the kind of icon or symbol of that,
Mm.
being enlightenment, ascension, and I find that he definitely embodies these things. So I don't see it in a negative way. I see it in a very positive way. But there's a lot of people out there that will take and go to extremes of things, um, that to me just aren't left hand path.
Yeah.
I mean, when I cruise my feed on my Facebook, I don't see hate and people trying to kill each other. I see support. I see love. I see, camaraderie. I don't see anger and hate and evil for the sake. And you do once in a while, you see it, and you just think that hopefully these people
I
get the message eventually.
yeah, I think that something like that sometimes can be a phase that people go through, if they
Right.
come from a Christian background and they're getting into the occult or looking at other spiritual systems, they tend to go through that phase and then they
Right.
tend to look inward and find themselves in their path that
Right. And,
way.
I get that. I do get that. You know, with books, it's a lot like musicians. It's like a musician will put out an album and it's maybe really depressing. And then a few years later, they'll put out another one and it's completely different. It's still the same sound, still the same
Right.
musician, but their music is a representation of what they're going through in their life,
Mhm.
And a lot of people don't really understand that or seem to consider that about authors. My books are the same. It's like as you travel, as you mentally grow, as you change, so do your books, and
Yeah.
what you put out there. And so, Smokeless Fire, I have to agree. I was in a very angry place when I feel the gin came to me and kind of chose me as the medium to bring them forth into the world.
Mhm.
But I was in a very angry, place,
Yeah.
very hurt place, So it worked that way. I'm not there anymore. So I'm working on new material. It's not, I would say, like, it's, don't get me wrong, it's not like white light, you know, uh, wishy-washy, whatever. But it's not working with the gin. Actually, what I'm working on now is working on moon magic, as it would be. So,
Okay. Well, let's talk a bit about that, about what we can expect from you in the near future about this Moon Magic project.
well, like I said, this goes back to my roots. This is a very personal book, probably the most personal book I've put out. This would be my eighth book, I think. Um, it's taking time because I really want to put I'm writing my book for me, and so it's like I'm putting a lot of my experiences, a lot of my own real technical, personal beliefs and systems into play here. So it's working with one of the Watchers. I don't want to give too much, away,
Yeah.
but it's working with one of the Watchers and Moon Magic in a way that I don't believe has been presented to the left hand path, if you will. Uh, So yeah, it's an interesting book. It's coming along. I'm really happy with it. Um, but I'm not sure exactly when it'll be out yet. But it'll be a
Okay.
little bit. But things sometimes, like I said, sometimes you just gotta slowly plod along and do what you need to
And
do.
that's the right way to go about it instead of just rushing it out. Yeah.
Right.
Take your time with it.
Exactly. So that's kind of what's going on. That
Okay. Now, go ahead and talk a bit about some magical services that you do offer.
I do offer a wide range, actually. I start off, as far as like there's different services. There's consultations. Sometimes people just want to get a magician's opinion. Sometimes I just want to talk about something that they can't talk to, say, their therapist about it, which is I get a lot because I can't talk about magic in their therapy,
Yeah.
with their own. Yeah. So they're still, they come and they'll bang, bounce these ideas or these things off of me. Want a different perspective on something. So there's consultation. Other people want to look more into a particular system or what's going on in their life. And so they're like looking at tarot readings. I also do crystal ball gazing, which is very different from crystal or from tarot, actually. Even though it's divination, it's completely different. Um, I offer an apprenticeship, which, as I was speaking of earlier, it's like take either a novice or an adept, either way. Sometimes, an adept wants to learn a new idea, or have a different comparison, advance their work in a way. But there's also a lot of new people, which I really like the new people coming in because they haven't had all this other crap put on them and expectation of what their thoughts or whatever about things, which has been misconceptions. So I get to have basically a clean slate, give the student a map of reality of magic and how it works, talk about my techniques and how they're implemented in the system, so I can get positive results from evocation, and essentially by the end, they're ready to do their own craft, feel confident in their work, know that they're going to have positive results from what they're doing. I also offer many rituals that, there's a wide range of things basically. So there's a lot of
Okay.
empowerment rituals, a lot of astral rebalancing for one's astral body, opening pathways, and here you go, again, it's this stuff isn't evil to me, it's like I look at these things and it's just all very positive to me, it's all about personal advancement, and so I
Right.
try to offer those services for people to advance, and move forward in their life. There's a lot of different things that are there. I do post my services here and there, so it's like there's a whole list you can check out on my Facebook page if you want.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, once again, everyone, Book of Smokeless Fire, very good book. I encourage you all to go out and purchase it. Thank you, Kane, once again for coming on to the show. And everybody watching, I will have all of Espen Kane's links below this video. You can go ahead and click on those, check out his books and his magical services. And everybody watching, like and subscribe to Dark Sorcery.
Thank you.